Hi, my name is Nicholas Charles. I have a background in accountancy and taxation, assisting high net worths and ultra high net worths, specifically focusing on property tax. Sadly, my story is, when I was 14 years of age, my father shared a scary story with me whereby he told me that my great grandfather was a multimillionaire, yet sadly, by the time he was 8 years of age, it all gone. And that got me interested in the world of generational wealth. As I became an accountant and a tax advisor, I started seeing the same problem with my own client base. And I wanted to know how big the problem of generational financial failure was. So I reached out to over 100 different advisors, ranging from tax advisors, lawyers, private bankers, fiduciaries. And I asked them the question, and I wanted to know how big this problem was. Sadly, I found out that the problem was global. It was a global problem, but it encouraged me or inspired me to write 2 best-selling books on the subject of generational wealth. But books, sadly, are limited. The outreach is limited. And I wanted a global solution for a global problem. And that involves tech. My background isn't in tech, but luckily I knew someone who was. His name was Madhavan Ramakrishnan, who reached out to me after he read my second book. He was a good friend of mine at the time and a client. And together we formed Danti, the wealth tech platform that helps families retain their wealth for multiple generations.
At Crowther's Property, I'm a self-employed estate agent. I own my own property brokerage. I offer a wide range of services to my clients, so whether it be sales, lettings, management, short lets, Airbnb, whatever they need, they work on with me on a one-on-one basis. In my previous life, I built a lettings department at a prop tech company, and lettings is my real specialist area of the business. And look, the real thrust of my business is to foster longer-term relationships with clients. So I don't want to pop up into their life on a one-off transactional basis. I want to transact for them multiple times and then bring the journey to an end, whether it be to selling their property, however they want to exit. So it's really trying to have a relationship that's more like a financial advisor rather than what you normally perceive in a relationship with a regular high street estate agency to be. Yeah, I've just launched my new business and I'm excited to grow it. So, hi Nick, hot button topic at the moment, and certainly one I'm facing in my journey as a self-employed estate agent, is I'm having a lot of clients come to me, landlords. Had a guy in Maida Vale actually just last week who rings me up and says, look, I just cannot justify keeping my property. Even though rents have gone up, it's not worthwhile. I think the other problem is prices are falling, right, especially in zones 1 and 2. I think that's the other kicker. Do you think, where's this coming from? Is it from politicians? Is there some scaremongering going on? Is it a bit of a manufactured thing, or does the truth lie somewhere in the middle?
Combination of the above, I'll be brutally honest with you, because I'm seeing the same thing with my clients who are landlords, have been in property for many, many years. But the rules have changed. Yeah. I think the goalposts have been moved as well. Definitely politics has not helped.
Yep.
We've seen so many taxes being introduced, not just on a country level, but almost on a local level as well. Councils are introducing licensing
Selective
as well.
licensing, yeah.
And we're wondering where all this is coming from. I think landlords are an easy target. I think motorists are also an easy target as well, if you're noticing. And it's just an easy way to make money, which I think is ridiculously unfair. Because on the flip side, what does the government always complain about? Lack of housing, lack of quality housing, and yet affordability. And yet they're destroying the private landlord, which increases rent, which kills the tenants, despite all these new tenancy rules they keep bringing in. And where's this heading? Don't know is the answer. Now, should you sell? Should you keep? It all depends on yourself. I mean, are you over leveraged, for example? Yep. How long have you held the properties? Yes, properties, the values have gone down, but have they gone down or have they corrected? I mean, if you compare property prices today to 10 years ago, they haven't really gone down, in all honesty. Were they artificially uplifted, for example, which you're seeing in zones 1 and zones 2? Were they ever worth that amount of money in the first place? Probably not. But yeah, you're right. The scaremongering, it is a crazy world that we're living in at the moment. We've got all sorts of conflict. Ukraine crisis is still around. That hasn't gone away. And we're now entering the Iranian crisis. Who knows what global politics will entail? What does that mean? It means you're scaring off a lot of the international investors, which were coming into England, because traditionally, especially London was a safe haven.
Yep.
You've got cash, you park it into London properties because it's as safe as houses. Yep. That saying is based on real estate. So it's a crazy world. You definitely, if you're a landlord, you have to assess where you are today. If you don't need to sell, don't forget, property is always a long-term game. You never entered into property for short-term money. Yep. It's not a traditional business. It's certainly nothing like tech. And it's still safe because you can touch it, you can feel it, you can rent it, you can sell it. But is it a good time to sell right now? Banks aren't lending. There's a lack of probably cash in the market. People are genuinely scared, and when they're scared, they don't invest. So everyone's holding off. So probably not the greatest time to sell. It hasn't been good for the last 2-3 years, ever since we saw interest rates go up. So assess is what I'll probably say. Have a look at your portfolio. Does it make you a profit? Can you comfortably afford the interest rates and the expenditure? But don't sell because of headaches. You've got people like yourself who can, I'm sure, take away a lot of these headaches. I outsource all my management to a team of experts to remove those headaches. So yeah, certainly wouldn't manage property on my own. No chance. Yep. Way too much legislation in place. So it's a matter of looking within and assessing your portfolio.
It feels to me like the government are trying to flush out the regular people from being landlords. That's what feels like it's happening. So you have your accidental landlords, people who did well, they could buy a house without having to sell their flat. So they wanted to keep their flat as a long-term investment, and people who had 2 and 3 properties. And, you can't offset your interest anymore. That got taken away a long time ago. We now have, it cost a lot of my clients a lot of money to get compliant with EICRs shortly after COVID. That was a fixed wiring test. As we'll discuss later, you got EPCs, yes. Meant to be a C for landlords only, not for end users. Rachel Reeves took another 2% of the landlords in the previous budget. I think it's a combination of, and then all the rental reforms that are coming up.
Yeah,
I think landlords are just thinking, even though rents are going up, what I'm getting is dwindling away, and then I'm just getting hammered to make it harder for me to get rid of tenants, to get rent increases. Everything seems, the way things are, it's already fairly well stacked in the tenants' favour.
Yep,
especially if tenants realise what they could get away with.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree anymore.
And these rental reforms are going to stack them even further in their favour. And as you touched on, the ironic thing is that it's making things worse for tenants.
Yes. Which is the irony.
Yeah.
They brought in these new rules to help tenants, but I think they're killing tenants as well, especially the private tenant.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing now with a lot of landlords, they're shifting away from the private market.
Yeah.
They'd rather go down the guaranteed rent route, whereby they rent the properties to the council.
Yep.
You make more money, you have less headaches, it's guaranteed, so there's virtually no chance of a void, there's virtually no chance of the council ever defaulting on their rent payments. So why on earth would you want to rent to the private market? Yeah. I'll be honest with you.
The other road it's going to send them to is what politicians really hate is Airbnb, ironically as well, because a lot of landlords are going to go down that road for more flexibility and for a high yield.
And annoyingly with Airbnb, it's a separate license that you require. God knows why. That makes absolutely no sense to me. You're still renting it to a human being, but hey, it's short-term rent, so therefore you need to apply for a license. More money, more headache, more hassle. I don't know why the government dislikes private landlords. I haven't got a clue, but it's clear to me they are. And what you're seeing now, who's buying? Who's becoming the largest landlord? BlackRock. So why is the government selling up to big institutions? Maybe they only want to deal with one customer. Maybe they've done something a little bit more sinister than that, but we won't go into
this is the ironic thing. They all have their little portfolios, so they're shooting themselves in the foot, these politicians. They all have, 2, 3
Yeah, of course they do.
Extra-
But do they follow the rules?
Yeah, that's
We saw what happened with Rachel Reeves. Did she follow the rules and got away with it? She
Yeah.
didn't get fined
Yeah.
for not following the rules. It helps being the Chancellor of the Exchequer, of course. So it's like one rule for us and one rule for them. But I just don't understand. You want to encourage investment. You want to encourage saving. Yet at the same time, you're destroying the chances that people have to invest their money in a safe asset that is real estate and property.
quite as you just touched on. I've heard Lloyds Bank and get massively into build to rent. BlackRock are buying everything. So is that the future of the rental market? Is going to be these soulless corporations that own everything? And what will happen to prices once they corner the market?
You're right. It seems to be going that direction, which is horrible. I don't know why is the answer. Unless you're in politics, who knows why they're doing this? But it's obvious to me they're going this direction, because the amount of legislation being brought in, the complexity of the tax system as well. I'm a tax advisor, and I think it's ridiculous the complexity. We've now got making tax digital, which
Quarterly
is just,
as well.
It's a sexy way of saying supply your tax returns on a quarterly basis. It's got nothing to do with making tax digital. That's just a sexy terminology to cover the extra administrative burden they're putting on the small business owner and the private landlord. So I shouldn't be all doom and gloom, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom, and it does seem that way. But essentially what I would say is, if you can hold out. Because property will always be a quality asset. Like I said, it goes down to the basic numbers. Can you afford to keep it? Is it still making you money? And if it is, why sell? Because if you sell, you're going to pay capital gains tax. Another headache. Yeah. Whether it's, even if it's in a company, you're still going to pay corporation tax on the chargeable gains. But essentially, and even the things like the interest rates that you mentioned, you still have the opportunity to incorporate your property portfolio, subject to certain rules and regulations, of course, and definitely seek good tax advice.
You have to have multiple properties to go down the limited company route, do you?
Yes.
Or,
yeah. You need to be able to run it. You need to be able to see it as a business. So it needs to be commerciality behind it. So sadly, for those landlords that own one or two properties or one or two buy-to-lets, if you incorporate that, you're going to get hammered with not just only capital gains tax on the transfer, but also stamp duty. Whereas if you're running it as a business, you have a portfolio of properties. The average test is, are you working 20 hours a week on the property portfolio? Right. You need to be able to show that. Then you will be able to incorporate your property portfolio. But again, it's not that straightforward. Do not get it wrong. Definitely seek advice from someone who's an expert in property tax, because if you get it wrong, it'll be the most expensive mistake you've ever made.
And what's just a bit of practical advice you would give to smaller portfolio landlords at the moment in terms of trying to hang on and not having to sell?
Look at the numbers. Numbers don't lie. Can you afford it? Have a look at other strategies as well. So, for example, guaranteed rent. You can potentially increase the amount of money that you're making, reduce your management fees as well. Even though the person who's giving you the guaranteed rent, they're making money off the rent. Of course, everyone needs to make money. But essentially, I've seen, for example, 2-bedroom flats in North London. I was getting £1,500 gross. So less the fees that I was paying, looking at an average about £1,300 per property. Now I'm getting £1,800 net. That's quite a decent jump. Yep. And I also get around, the rules and regulations that are bringing in now with the Tenancy Act. So that headache. So I've removed the headache. I've increased my rent, but I'm utilising a manager that I trust, that will be able to source the right. You still need to source the right tenant. Just because it's got guaranteed rent doesn't mean you're going to get a good tenant that will look after the property. So that's another headache you need to worry about. But it's not another headache. It's the same headache. Always make sure that you have the right tenant in your property, because the last thing you want is for them to destroy it, because all that money that you've made on the rent, you're going to end up spending it on repairs and maintenance. I'm sure you're fully aware.
I am, yeah. And do you get involved with the mortgages as well, or do you know how the mortgage market is for buy-to-let at the moment?
Yeah, I know how mortgages work. I'm not a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
I work with multiple mortgage brokers. It's tough at the moment.
Because when we first spoke, when we were teeing this up, I think the Iran thing had barely started, right? And now I've
Yes.
seen mortgage rates have gone up 1.5%.
Yeah, it's incredible. Although I had a conversation with someone literally yesterday, one of my tax advisors that I work closely with, and we just think that over time, banks need to lend money because that's how they make money. Now, what you're going to get with this uplift in interest rates, with this, with everyone, with this scaremongering regarding the Iranian war conflict and Ukraine and taxes, people aren't going to borrow. So if people stop borrowing money, that means the banks stop making money. So what's going to happen? In the same way you see with the sales on the high street, there's going to be a sale in the mortgage market. So those interest rates will effectively have to come down. When, I don't know, but they'll have to come down because the banks need to be commercial because they need to make money. So yeah, short term, it's a disaster. How long will the crisis last? No one has a crystal ball. But what I do know, basic economics, banks need to make money. And if people aren't borrowing, that means they're losing money. And if they're losing money, what's going to happen to interest rates? They're going to come down.
Right. Yeah, I'm very nervous especially about the central London market. It has been going down significantly for the last 10 years. And my fear is if this conflict continues, oil stays high, prices go up, rates go up even more, I think that will really, really kill off an already fragile market. The flip side is, if you are brave and you have the means, now would be a great time to stop buying buy-to-lets, ironically.
1,000,000%.
Because if you have a decent deposit and you can get a good amount of rent, like Notting Hill, those sort of areas, what I own in, that's come down 40% in the last 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, amazing.
So you can pick up, quote-unquote, a bargain.
Yeah, if you're cash rich,
Yep.
as you mentioned, I mean, you don't really want to be having too much cash in the bank because inflation will erode the value, erodes the value of cash every single year. So yeah, now's a great time to buy. Fear mongering means things are on sale.
Yeah.
There are desperate landlords out there who have over leveraged. There's massive opportunity to pick up bargains. You talk about the Iranian crisis. Property in Dubai has gone down by about 30-40%. Whereas before it was a massively inflated market. Literally in the last month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the last month, the property market has come down massively in Dubai. So opportunities there. There's always opportunities. There's always good from bad things, and there's always bad things from good things, shall I say. So, the world has balance, but of course not everyone is cash rich. But yeah, like you said, great opportunities to buy in lovely areas like Notting Hill, like St John's Wood, like your Hampsteads.
Yeah.
Really good, affluent areas that you can
Try and buy and
clearly make
hold
money.
the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Because, there are a lot of people bailing out who bought in 2018, 2019, and there's a lot of landlords, as you rightly said. This is the other problem that's going to happen as well. When people's low fixed come up from 2021 or whenever before rates started going up, there's going to be some people getting some nasty surprises, right? And again,
On a personal and on a private level.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, if your mortgage, if you're paying 1.5%, 2.5% fixed rate of interest for the last 5 odd years, you're not getting that again. You don't need to be a mortgage broker to know that. And all of a sudden, you're paying double the amount of interest, maybe sometimes even triple the interest, and that's going to hurt. I mean, of course, that's going to hurt. But what can you do? We had it very good for a very, very long time, so I can't really complain. We all knew that interest rates were unsustainable at base rates of 0.25 and 0.5%, but it dragged on, and we had it for about a decade, really. It was about 10 years.
Longer than that.
Long?
Yeah, 15 years. And people become accustomed that money's free to borrow, and it's not. And I found this. It's trying to tell buyers, actually, you get a mortgage now for 4%. That's very good. But there's no telling people that because they have the fear of missing out, right? They should have bought or they should have locked in on a mortgage, and then it all happens so fast, and away you go.
We get it, but if those old enough to remember the 80s, interest rates were 14, 15%.
Yeah.
So it's not as bad as people are portraying it to be.
Yeah. I think the problem now is that, especially between wages and property prices, we've got so out of whack.
Yep.
That if interest rates went to literally everybody, well, not literally everybody, but like a lot of people will get repossessed, right? Because even back in the 80s, yes, it went up, but at least property prices were somewhat sensible and somewhat linked to each other's, to people's wages. I just think it's got to that stress point now where if it goes 6, 7, 8%, I think people are in big bother.
Yeah, I'd like to say there's, I can give you some good. I can have a magic wand over that, but I'm sadly the reality is there. Yeah, once you come out of those fixed rates, interest rates can, and don't forget, people are borrowing more than they did in the 80s. Yeah. Like in the 80s, you could buy a house for like £80,000 to £100,000. Yeah. If you borrowed 50%, that's a £50,000 mortgage. Yeah. Okay,
now that's your deposit on a 1-bedroom flat in London now.
If you're lucky,
scary to think, yeah.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I was speaking to one client once. This is incredible. A few years back, he bought a studio house. It was a 1-bedroom house, quite unique, in Kensington, Chelsea, for 1.1 million, next to his house. I'm like, why on earth did you buy that for? I mean, you live in a beautiful house in Kensington. He goes, because it's got a garage. Someone has parked my car there.
Right. That garage will be worth 300,000-400,000.
Yeah, comfortably, and that's why he bought it.
Yeah,
he bought it literally for the garage. He didn't even rent out the property.
Yeah,
he had a very nice Rolls Royce, so he didn't want to park it on the street.
He can probably ride this out. Yeah, fine. So in terms of, let's go back to Danti, your company. So it's you help people maintain their wealth. What are you doing in terms of things like fees, capital gains, whatever it is for your landlords at the moment? How are you navigating them through this situation?
So with Danti's a wealth tech platform, which was created because I kept seeing way too many families implode and losing money. In fact, whilst making money is hard, believe it or not, keeping money is actually 10 times harder.
Because you mentioned it's about not just about maintaining the wealth, but about the knowledge, isn't it? Of
the wisdom. We call it the wisdom behind, the wisdom behind the wealth. Because the term wealth actually means well-being. But over time, people have misassociated that to be just money, financial. But financial capital is just one aspect. So you've got multiple forms of capitals. You've got financial, human capital, intellectual capital, and social capital. Now, if you look at the most successful families in the world, like your Rothschilds, your Rockefellers, your Waltons, we all know these big names, they're successful because they pass all the wealth to the next generation, not just focusing on financial capital. So I wrote 2 books on this subject because I wanted to, my vision and my mission in my life is to help families retain their wealth for multiple generations, because I've seen way too many families implode, and it's horrible. I've seen father and son divorce. I've seen siblings, I'm talking proper divorce, like literally go to court and destroy each other, spend millions of pounds in legal fees. It's just a complete waste. I'm a father. You father as well? No. So I'm a father, and I hate to see that happen to my children. So I wrote 2 books on the subject, but look, it's a global problem needs a global solution. The only way you can achieve that is through tech. Yeah. My background is not in technology, sadly, but my business partner is, who actually at the time was a friend of mine, a guy called Madhavan Ramakrishnan, Y Combinator alumnus. And he reached out to me after my second book, read it, said there's a tech play in what you're trying to solve. And that was essentially the start of Danti. And what does Danti do initially? So it enables you to have clarity over your wealth. And we'll touch on landlords as well, because landlords are notoriously terrible when it comes to being organised and with their paperwork. I'm sure you've seen this, and you know what? I'm guilty of that myself, by the way. So I'm not blaming landlords. We're all guilty of this. And speak to mortgage brokers every time they want to do a deal with their bigger landlords. It's a nightmare for them. They'll get the deal, then they'll wait months for the paperwork because it's just everywhere. Yeah. Spreadsheets, documents, emails. It's just all sporadic and all over the place. So we created a platform initially to enable people to have all their assets in one place. That was the initial play. And now we're building the wisdom capture tool, as I call it. But on the landlord side, so that's our entry point within Danti, not only can you have everything in place, so your mortgages, your documentation, your breakdown of all your property portfolios, your structures.
Your yields.
Yeah, your yields, your rent, your advisors, who they are. But the system itself can be shared with your advisors. So, for example, you're my property manager. I can share with you my UK portfolio, for example. Instead of you sending me emails, you just update my platform and I can get to see it live, essentially, every time you update it. So, we get rid of that the email barrage, as I call it. So everything's uploaded at the same time. If I want to borrow some money from my bank or via my mortgage broker, I can share either the single property or the portfolio of properties I wish to borrow against. More brokers are going to start loving me as a result of this, because they get to literally log in. I share with them what I want them to see. All the information's there. Can we do a deal? Yes or no? Now, we minimize the transaction period from months to literally minutes. And that is absolutely crucial within landlords, but also just having that clear understanding. Especially if you're, the bigger landlords tend to have multiple structures. They might have multiple SPVs, very common, especially in the development world. You might want to, you create an SPV because you want to develop one particular building, and you might encourage investors to come into that SPV. I'm sure you've seen it.
Special purpose vehicle.
Yeah, special purpose vehicle. Yeah. And
it's a unique structure for a fairly, what most people think is a fairly advanced deal or complicated way of structuring.
Yeah, it's not a complicated way of structuring, but it's just a clean way of structuring a project.
Right.
Especially if you're inviting, third-party investors. So you might have a project and you might put 100 grand of your own money in, but you need an extra million, for example. You go out to 9 investors, they put £100,000 in. Now you're all invested in this one building, which is owned by one company, the SPV. But as you grow your portfolio, you might have multiple SPVs, you might have multiple partnerships, you might have assets in multiple countries. Well, wouldn't it be great to see that all in one place? Again, that's what Danti provides for, is that additional clarity. And also, more importantly, when it comes to the next generation, if you're going to start talking to them, advising them, transferring that wisdom that we spoke about, it's a lot easier to communicate about the wealth if you've got something in place that you can see,
right?
That you can show and say, this is our portfolio, these are our assets. There's no guesswork in place. It's clear, it's clean, it's crisp, and it's easy to communicate with your family, with your advisors.
So they should be able to pick up the patterns of what's going on and gain that experience. Experience, really, isn't it? For, if the market takes a turn or whatever it is going forward, how should we position ourselves? How should we reposition? All that sort of stuff.
And with AI here and growing exponentially at the speed of light, wouldn't it be amazing to have one secure box, which is what Danti is, that you can pull the AI technology within your box, and all of a sudden now you've got the world's leading administrator administering your portfolio that you can ask questions of.
Yeah.
And that's literally what we're doing at the moment, whereby you can say, I want to give me a report highlighting my net yields against asset 1, 2, and 3. Which properties are making me money? Which is the most profitable properties that I have within my portfolio? Which ones are making losses?
Yeah.
If interest rate were to go up, for example, to X, Y, Z, how would that affect my portfolio? Bang, you get that information straight away. That's where we are with AI, and that's what we're looking to do and looking to introduce now with Danti. But you need the data in one place.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't do it. And no one wants to upload their portfolio onto open AI technology, open source tech. So yeah, that's why you need something like Danti.
Fine. Yeah, we're going through a similar thing in the real estate world. I think in the last 10 or so years, again, it's the tech, the AI, the advancements that's really allowing people like me, self-employed estate agents, the playing field has been completely leveled, right? Because back in the day, you needed a shop, you needed staff, you needed cars, phones, all this nonsense. And, this was before Rightmove and Zoopla, and I think the advent of Rightmove and Zoopla really changed the game. And now, the cloud-based, the digital tech that I can use to process tenancy agreements for my clients, everything they need, really, the referencing, it's so straightforward now and available at such a cost point that it's accessible to people like me. that it's really changing that customer experience. So, I can deal with my clients on a one-on-one basis. Again, they can have everything together in the same digital platform. Funnily enough, when we spoke about Danti, it could be sort of worked for estate agents to plug into, couldn't it, really? And also to keep their clients, every one of their rentals, the gas safeties, all the compliance, the tenancy agreements, everything in one place. So again, it's a really clean experience for the clients.
Yeah, no, exactly. And even on so the structure document, you can alternate. So instead of having structures, like multiple companies, you'll have multiple clients. And then you can click on the client, then you can see their entire portfolio. So yeah, it is manageable for estate and letting agents. What are you seeing though? I guess a question for you within the real estate world. How important is the client relationship now that with the advancement of technology?
Well, I think if you want to call it the tech, the outsourcing, the brokerage models, however you want to term it, it means that people like me, we can spend more time with our clients and get to know our clients. So it becomes more of a financial advisor relationship rather than a one-off transactional relationship where they go to a high street agency, they'll let their property, and then when they want to re-let it, the negotiator will have already left or got sacked because there's a massive turnover of staff. So you don't really foster longer-term relationships. And started the gentleman in Maida Vale I just mentioned a few minutes ago. I've let 3 times now. I've let his flat. He was lucky enough he could buy a house in Chiswick without having to sell it. And he just came to me last week. He's like, this is just not working out from a rental point of view. And immediately, right, what's my sales valuation? How can we market it for sales? Again, so you don't have to go from department to department, deal with multiple people. You have one guy, me, who has let that property, who has managed it for years, who knows it inside out. Then when it comes to sell, there's nobody better to sell it than me because I understand it. And that's the great thing about how all this is developing. And it's also, in terms of, I believe in what I'm selling to my clients, what I provide to my clients, but it's also doing away with all the unnecessary fees that they get charged at the mainstream estates. If you go on an estate agent's website and you look at their landlord's fees, you need a PhD to understand what to let your property. So really, what they're charging you, their percentage, really is just for advertising and viewing it, getting to the point of a deal, and then they'll charge you £500 to do the tenancy agreement. I mean,
which is insane.
Yeah, I can do that outside a property. If I have an acceptable offer, I can get the tenants to download the app and log in on the app, and they can see the tenancy agreement there and then. If there's any special conditions, and when I'm in front of my laptop, I can add them to the body of the contract. There's no need for me to charge my client for that. The referencing costs me a small amount of money, which I carry as a cost of business, but they're charging their clients £70-80 per reference, per tenant.
Adds up. It definitely adds up. And the worst thing that I've seen with some letting agents is they make money on the repairs.
Yeah.
And that's a bugbear for me. That really annoys me. Whereby they'll get they'll get the contractor price, they'll add an extra 20% for their own fee and then recharge it to their client, which really irritates me.
Well, everything's marked up, and then it tends to be above £1,500. If they do £2,000 worth of work for you, they'll charge you another 20% plus VAT, even though you're already paying them.
Yep.
So you could pay me. You pay £150 to do a basic job, and that's part of your management fee. Or they'll just arrange one job to fit a new boiler for £4,000. You paying £800 or £1,000 more. It's shocking, and that's the way they're really taking money.
So what would you advise then landlords to get around this problem?
I'd like landlords to seek an independent agent. Look, I'm sure there are independents like me who charge extra as well. I can't. That's their business.
No, I get it.
But I would never. I want to keep it simple for my clients. It's 1% to let and 1% to have it let and managed. There are zero add-ons.
I love clean and simple.
Yeah,
I genuinely love clean and simple. I mean, I'm the same even in the accountancy world. Goodness me, the amount of hidden fees there are.
Yeah.
Whereby you charge a fee for the accounts, you charge a fee for the tax, and then every time the client calls you, you charge another fee for that. The clock doesn't stop, and it's like wow, what I always tell clients genuinely when they want to source any advisor, whether it's a letting agent, tax advisor, accountant, bank manager, lawyer, whoever it may be, always seek value. Don't seek price, because you can have a cheap agent who ends up becoming the most expensive agent you ever work with because they haven't done the homework on the tenant, for example, and they put in someone terrible, destroys your property. Always seek value and empower yourself to ask the questions like, how much do you charge for lettings, for example? Are there any hidden fees? Make it transparent to me what you're charging up front. I mean, I remember once I got stung with, I was stung, letting agent, one of the bigger boys, won't mention their name, whereby they encouraged me to take a 2-year deal on the tenant. I was like, and it sounded amazing. I was like, okay, yeah, because then you got guaranteed rent, 2 years, no headaches. What they failed to tell me is they charged me up front 2 years worth of fees.
So you don't get rent. You don't get any rent for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. They forgot to mention that bit.
Yeah.
Tough lesson. I had to learn the hard way. But hey, ask questions always, and always ask about fees. I mean, and if there's a fidget, then go somewhere else. Or if the person doesn't, you don't resonate with that individual. Sometimes it's good to like the person, to get on with them. A simple thing like that. And don't be afraid to say no. And don't be afraid to ask those questions. It's absolutely essential. You don't want to end up with the wrong advisor, because it will be the most expensive mistake you've ever made. And be clear on what it is that you want. Do you need the letting agent? Don't seek a friend, is what I'm trying to say. Letting agents there to do a job. Or do you need an estate agent? Do you not know? Go out and seek advice. Should I sell or should I let it out? Best person to ask, managing agent.
Yeah.
Because they've got 10, 20 years experience in that area, in that industry. So ask. And guess what? That advice is actually free because you can have it as part of your interview process in terms of working out whether, who to work with. Same with an accountant, same with a tax advisor, whoever it is that you're going to work with. It's a relationship. Treat them like an employee almost, because you're employing them. You know what I mean here. Obviously not employing them per se legally, but you are employing their services to work for you to add value. And in accountancy terms, it's save them tax, get them clear on what they can and can't do. And with me specifically, I connect a lot of my clients to the people that I have in my professional network. So you'd be surprised how many clients come up to me and say, I've got a property, do you know a managing agent? I'm not a managing agent, but I know someone who is. Yep. Or they'll ask me, I want to borrow money, do you know a mortgage? Do you know a mortgage advisor? Do you know any good lawyers in this particular field or whatever it may be? And ask those questions. I love connecting clients to the right advisor. But again, the decision, however, always rests with the client. Yes, I'll guide you, but the decision is yours, because you're the one who's going to be paying them. You're not paying me for it, you're paying them. But what I would say is I'll always know that person directly. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, I've probably done business with them as well. So I put my money where my mouth is, as the saying goes. And that's essential. Because it's vital to provide. I've built a network over the last 20, 25 years, and it'd be crazy for me not to connect the dots, as the saying goes, to connect my clients to the right people, to help them out, to solve a problem. Makes me look fantastic as well. And the likelihood of them sticking with me enhances, because I've done them a favor over and above. I've gone the extra miles, as the saying goes. I've gone over and above what is required of me.
Yeah.
So Ed, here's the big question. Is buy-to-let dead? And if it is, what are the opportunities out there in the property market right now?
I think in its traditional sense, it probably is for quote-unquote regular people who want to buy a place, refinance it in a year or 2 years, and try and buy again. I just think the regulation, the tax setup, the way it's stacked against, and also the way sales prices have gone the last 20 years as well. It's hard to find yield from the get-go to make these things stack up. So I think the accidental landlords are getting flushed out of the market as well. I think there's opportunities in HMOs.
Okay,
I know
that's
there's
house
more,
of multiple occupancy.
yeah.
Yep.
So I know there's more regulation, and it's a bit more of a pain, but that's where the yield is. Funnily enough, I went to value 2 flats yesterday for rentals. A lady had bought a place in Clapham Junction and a place in Southwark. They were both in low-rise ex-local authorities, and they were both 4 beds. And so 800 square feet. The one in Clapham Junction get £4,000 a month, and probably around 3,500 in Southwark.
Okay.
And the price she bought them at, that's an amazing yield. And she can go again, she can refinance and go again. Now, there's a lot, and also because of the way rental prices have gone, your young professionals who've just come to London, they can't afford a one-bedroom flat by themselves. Right. So the demand is greater than ever for these sort of things. The other thing that the councils are quite good on is allowing, the old Victorian and Georgian houses to be converted into HMOs.
No, it's a surprise. Council's actually helping out for a change.
Helping out, yeah. Because they otherwise they'd be forced to, house the tenant. They need places where young professionals can rent for £800-900 a month, can rent a room. As crazy as that sounds in London, you only get a room for that, but that is where it's got to. So that the councils are pretty good on that. So you get your property, pretty much every square foot of it is rentable space. So it's a bedroom. You might have one small shared kitchen living area, and I think that's where it's going. That's where the yield is. That's where you can get to stack up, and then that gives you more financing options.
So if I'm developing a brand new HMO,
Yep.
what would you recommend? Would you put a bathroom in each bedroom? Do you need to have a kitchenette in each bedroom, or do you have a shared facilities? What makes the biggest difference in terms of demand? Because you obviously want to rent the rooms out. No one wants voids.
Yep.
So what is working in your opinion?
Well, the best ones I've seen. I saw a place. It was in Acton, and all the rooms were different colours.
Okay.
And some of them are en suites, some didn't, and the rates were varied compared to that. None of them had a kitchenette in the room. I think that would be overkill at that point. But yeah, you could probably charge £1,200-1,300 a month, as silly as that sounds. No, I think you have to have a shared kitchen area with maybe a little TV area, and the rest of them are either en suites or shared bathrooms, depending on. And there's a good source of Wi-Fi. That was the other thing. So she was inundated with tenants because they have their clothes, they have their laptop, maybe a TV, and they just want to move in. And that was the best one I've seen. But no, I wouldn't go to that extent. I'd keep it simple. Keep as much bedroom space as possible, so you're getting as much rent in as possible. These ones I went to see yesterday, they were both 4 beds, 1 bath.
Oh, wow. And still rented as an HMO?
Oh, they will be. Yeah.
Goodness me. And they're still making the money?
Well, we'll be putting them on the market in the next couple of weeks, but they will, one of them is right next to Clapham Junction train station.
Oh,
so,
yeah, perfect.
If you're young professionals who want to go to the Clapham Grand on a Friday night, and again, it's £2,200 a month for your own 1 bed in Clapham, so...
Wow.
What are you going to do? You're going to pay £9. You're going to have to.
It's not just the rent as well. It's the extra expense. Because if you're renting your own 1-bedroom flat, for example, the onus is you pay the council tax, you pay the bills, you pay the water rates, you pay everything, you pay the Wi-Fi, you pay everything.
Yeah.
Whereas in an HMO, those costs are either shared or incurred by the landlord.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it's going to go. And I think, again, that's because of affordability. You will be inundated with demand for those if you get your product right in the right part of London, with the right transport links. And this lady, once we got these up and running, she will refinance and go again. So I said to her, "You're one of the brave ones, right? Everybody else is either unwilling to enter the market or is leaving." She sees opportunity.
There's a brilliant saying, and this is from Warren Buffett, so it's not properties, it's to do with stocks and shares. But he said, when the masses get greedy, I get scared. Yeah. And when the masses get scared, I get greedy.
Yeah.
Really famous saying. And it's so true. You're seeing that now. There is massive opportunity to buy property at significantly lower prices than they were 12, 24, 36 months ago. So why not? Why not? I mean, if you're getting a good price, if you're going to secure a good yield,
Yep.
secure a good agent. Hello.
Yeah.
Very most important. Get a good tax advisor as well. Very important. But seriously, the opportunities are there to make money at a time when everyone is scared.
Yeah.
So don't give it all up to blooming BlackRock. Make some money yourself. Again, rely on the basic mathematics, economics, business principles of buying a property. Make sure it's affordable. Make sure you factor that window regarding the interest rates as well. Make sure it doesn't impact, or make sure you buy it in the most tax efficient manner. So again, speak to your tax advisor regarding that. But yeah, there's opportunities out there to buy property at significantly lower amounts and maximizing your yields by utilizing a strategy like HMO.
Yeah.
With HMOs, what do you think landlords should be really looking out for?
Oh, and licensing, without a doubt. So it's selective, additional, and also your HMO licensing. You've got to get your fire doors, your fire safety stuff. There's a lot of stuff to do. I partner with a company called YUNO, YUNO, and they're a tech-led platform that help landlords specifically get compliant with whatever license they need. And if needs be, they'll actually do the whole application process for the client. So I did do some HMOs back in my day when I did my lettings exams. But no, I mean, I wouldn't be charging enough if I had to do all the HMO stuff as well. That would be a whole different strand to my business, but not something I want to get involved in. With these properties I just mentioned, I'll simply be letting and managing them. But
say, for example, works needed to be done to a property. Would you help with that? Would you find the contractors for the client, or just let the client get on with it? Or a mix of both? Yeah,
I think this is all taken care of with so they're doing the licensing process together. Yeah, I know companies who can do fire door checks. I obviously have maintenance guys for my regular, management. But no, it is. You've got to. It's a front loaded thing, so there's a lot to get up and running. But once you're there and you understand it, I think that's where the profitable section of buy-to-let's going to be in the future. It's going to be in HMOs.
Brilliant. I've got to share actually a scare story, and this is actually a true story, a case study with one of my clients. So the assumption is with HMOs, you rent a room out, it's an HMO. However, certain councils are really, really tricky when it comes to their HMO licensing, and I will name and shame Camden, because they're one of the worst boroughs in London. They are now, when I say now, a few years back, they implemented a new rule that said that anyone with any property with 3 or more individuals that were not related, i.e. not a family, was automatically deemed an HMO. So picture this, you rent out your property to 3 friends on a single AST. You do that in Camden, that's an automatic HMO, even though you're not renting the rooms out. And my client got caught with this and sadly had to pay a very significant penalty as a result. Yeah. Absolutely horrendous. But yes, so look out for those rules and ask your managing agent if you're not aware.
Work with a good agent, because the only reason my clients know about to get licensed is because I'm constantly checking them with and I tell them. I had a Wandsworth, it comes in, it just came in actually 1st of April, and she had no idea. I got in touch with her. She lives in Fulham, so it's a slightly different borough. But this is the thing, they don't. It's not like they're really helping you find out about it.
Oh, don't be silly.
They want to fine you.
Of course they do.
And she had no idea.
Yeah, they want to fine you. They want the money.
Yeah.
And even worse, and going back to the case study of my particular client, no win, no fee lawyers who lap up this sort of work because they charge 20, 30, 40% fee on whatever money that those tenants get, which is very, very painful as a landlord. You
have to pay back a whole year's rent sometimes.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's what they chase. Yeah. That's the default position. Yeah. You repay a single year's rent back plus whatever you need to pay back to the council. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. So beware of those those laws, and have an agent out there that goes the extra mile and searches, and because they know at the end of the day, if they don't know, they should blooming know. I'm going to go quick question. I know we covered it before. We're going to ask you again. What does full management mean? We see it branded by all the agents out there. But what should a landlord expect when they're paying for full management?
They should expect never to have to get a phone call on a Saturday evening at a blocked toilet from a tenant. I guess it's a peace of mind thing, I think. Yeah, it's the one side. I guess the obvious side of it is the maintenance jobs. They don't want to be bothered by tenants contacting them about maintenance jobs. I think the other thing is, and hopefully what I provide is peace of mind. So, you know, if you get management from a regular, big corporate, the person who's managing your flat has never or will never go to your property. It's simple as that. They might not even be in London, right?
Wow.
They're sat in a call centre somewhere. It's a pretty low-paid job for the amount of stress it causes. There's a high staff turnover. So I think what I provide is really continuity and peace of mind. So, you know, I go to the properties, I know the properties, I let the properties. I can often help the tenants repressurize boilers, all that sort of stuff. Because otherwise, again, you're just getting call out after call out after call out. And as I touched on before, yeah, there's no add-ons with my fees. So my maintenance contracts, the invoices aren't marked up. And just because the work's either £400 or £4,000, there's no difference. Yeah, there's no extra admin charges, right? So
not every agent does that, by the way. Not every agent does that. Some do add on top of the fees.
Oh, most. If you look at the landlord's fees on the big corporates, the big high street agents, it's 3 pages worth of fees that they... And there was a tenant fee ban 12, 15 years ago, whenever that was. No problem for the big agents. We'll just charge our landlords double instead and claim they're doing all this extra work and keeping them compliant and all this sort of thing. So, no, look, for me, like fully let or fully managed means exactly what it says on the tin. You are compliant within the confines of the UK law for the fee. And that is what you should expect from your agent, as far as I'm concerned.
I couldn't agree anymore. Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, as a landlord, that's exactly what I expect from my managing agent. You know, I expect a full service, and I expect them to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
And no hidden fees.
Yeah.
One of my bugbears is hidden fees. So yeah, it's annoying, and unfortunately, quite a lot of agents do add these hidden fees, especially with repairs and maintenance, which is a big bugbear of mine.
Yeah. So yeah, no, definitely seek out some independent advice.
Perfect.
EPCs.
Oh,
are you aware of what's going on?
Oh no! Don't give me that, please. Do we have to talk about EPCs? Sadly, we do, because it's coming. What does it mean for the landlord? What first and foremost, why is the government introducing this? What's the reasoning behind it?
Well, their reasoning is environmental reasons. If they were deadly serious about the environment, then owner-occupiers would have to get an EPC of C as well. But of course, it's not. It's directly targeted at landlords. I think it's just another way to force landlords.
It's another tax.
Because the problem is, so it's all right, you know, I'm from up north. If you're up north, you got UPVC windows. If you've got a modern boiler, you'll be fine. It's fairly straightforward to do these things. But if you've got the old Victorian conversions in London, A, you might be you're probably in a conservation area. You can't double glaze the beautiful old sash windows anyway.
No.
B, the ceiling height is so voluminous. You know, when they test it, it's hard for these things to be efficient, given the old windows, the height of the ceilings, to heat these things. And then there's the old roofs as well, and it's just bonkers that this is going to happen.
What's going to happen with things like Grade 1 and Grade 2 listed properties?
Yeah.
Are they exempt?
I do not understand how you can get a C grading. Most of these are Ds and Es, and without great expense. And also, if there's only one buy-to-letter in the building, nobody else is going to want to pay for new specially insulated roof tiles, or it's just going to be another nightmare.
Yeah, it's insane. I couldn't agree anymore. It's just another bonkers idea being brought in by the government, which sounds great to the voters, but in reality, it's just yet another.
Guess how many I've let hundreds and hundreds of properties. Guess how many times tenants ask me what the EPC rating is? It is 0. I can never remember one single viewing or offer or anything where they care what the EPC is. They do not care.
No, I've never been asked either
No.
as a landlord,
No.
And my agent has never asked me.
Yeah.
It's all I know is that was it every 10 years you've got to renew
10
your
years,
EPC rating,
Yeah.
and it's a pain because you have to spend money to get the EPC rating, and then you're battling to get it within the certain limits. Even mortgage companies are asking for EPCs. Oh, what difference does it make to a bloody lender?
Yeah.
What the EPC rating is for a particular property, but they ask for it now.
Yeah.
I think it's shocking.
Yeah.
Probably because the government's leaning on them to say don't
Don't
lend
lend
money
on
on anything
E's.
that's less than E and below.
Yeah.
Which I think is just absolutely shocking. But sad world that we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that will be the next pressure point where groups of landlords are going to be forced to sell again, especially in London.
Yeah.
Because there's just no way of getting these beautiful old buildings
No chance.
to be a C.
But I was under the impression that Grade 1 and Grade 2 listed properties were exempt from this EPC, or is that
We'll see. I haven't
sort of been brushed under the carpet? Because you can't touch a Grade 2 or Grade 1 listed property. You can't do anything to
or
it.
even the buildings that are in conservation areas.
That's true. Yeah,
you can't mess with the sash windows.
No. I mean, I literally bought, this was years ago, we bought a 2-bedroom flat in Kentish Town in a conservation area. The windows, we wanted to put double glazing windows, but we had to put in double glazed sash windows because the council would not budge. They're like, no, we want sash windows. So, and for those who don't know anything about sash windows, they're expensive.
Yeah, to maintain and repair.
They are not cheap.
They're a very specialist thing.
Yeah. And not many providers make sash windows. I mean, it's very niche, which means expensive. Yeah. So it was expensive then. I'd hate to, and this was about over 10 years ago, so I hate to think how much double glazed sash windows cost now.
Yeah. But yeah, if I was running, maybe I should start a plumbing company, because there'll be a raft of new boilers around 2030.
No, of course.
As well, I think that's probably where the money is.
Yeah, and insulating properties as well.
Yeah.
So if you're selling insulation and boilers, happy days.
Happy days. You're rubbing your hands in glee. At what's coming up.
So there you go, another idea from today. Then start your own plumbing business
with the wrong thing,
or a hardware business selling purely insulation and boilers.
Yeah.
But let's talk about tax. We got to cover that painful subject on tax. Couple of things that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
There is, back in the 80s and 90s, it was very fashionable for overseas landlords to own real estate, UK real estate in offshore companies. Why? Because believe it or not, the UK used to be a tax haven for capital gains tax. If you're an overseas resident, you never paid capital gains tax on your properties if you sold them in England. Sadly, that no longer exists. Everyone pays tax. If the property's in England, you pay tax in England. Therefore, there is no benefit whatsoever in owning UK properties in an offshore entity. You're literally paying double the amount of fees. So you'll pay a fiduciary company to maintain that overseas company, whether it's in the BVI, Seychelles, Cyprus, Dubai, wherever it may be. And then you've got to pay a UK accountant to file the taxes for that overseas company here in England. And they also have to be registered at UK Companies House.
Right.
So you're paying multiple fees for no reason. The reason why I'm saying this, guy literally picked up a very large client from another group of accountants because he wanted to now move or onboard his properties from his overseas company to a UK company. However, if you're going to do something like that, please seek professional advice. You do not want to be hit with stamp duty, because if you transfer a property from one entity to another entity, that's deemed a purchase by the buying entity, which means stamp duty. It also means a sale from the transferee to the transferor. So that means capital gains tax or corporation tax on the chargeable gain. Yeah. So look out for things like that.
There's an extra 5% on overseas buyers anyway, isn't there, on top of the already punitive levels of stamp duty?
Correct. So definitely get advice on that. In terms of getting around, we know we covered it a bit earlier, but getting around the
Are there any ways around
punitive
stamp
interest
duty?
rates.
Somebody told me if you buy 6 properties off the same person, that gets you off paying stamp duty.
It reduces, it basically brings
Right.
it into a commercial rate of
Right.
stamp duty. And commercial rates of stamp duty are significantly less than residential stamp duty. There's no additional charge either if it's under commercial rates. Also, look out for mixed use properties. If there's a commercial element in that particular property, again, seek professional advice. Have a look at the history of that property. So, for example, if you've got a house with a farm and they're connected onto one title deed, for example, the farm itself is a business and has a commercial aspect. And if it's tied into the house, then you're now looking at commercial rates of stamp duty rather than residential, especially if they're on one title deed, because the farm is a business.
Right.
Therefore, it's commercial. The house is part of the farm. Therefore, it's mixed use. Therefore, it's commercial rates. So have a look out on the actual deal itself. What are you buying? Are you buying multiple units, for example? Can you buy a company rather than the actual asset itself? So you're paying stamp duty on shares, which is 0.5%.
Right.
Problem when buying a company, however,
So
you
if
don't
you-
know
if
what
you-
that
if
company's
you-
been involved in.
So if you're buying a limited company of a landlord who's looking to offload their portfolio, oh right, okay, so because it's held in a company, that would be beneficial.
Another reason to own property in SPV, special purpose vehicles. So if you're buying to develop to sell, then it makes perfect sense to buy that one asset that you intend to sell within a company, because then you can just sell the company to the buyer.
Right.
Nice and clean. You can show the transaction history because you've only set it up specifically for that particular development, and then you're selling the company with the property inside.
Does SPVs help you get around stamp duty in any way, or is that still
Only if you're buying the SPV.
right?
So it doesn't necessarily.
So if you set
get
up
round.
an SPV to buy property, you still have to pay stamp.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're paying the punitive rates as well.
Right.
So it's instantly treated as. So usually when you buy a second home, you pay the extra 5% stamp
yeah.
duty. But if you're buying your first property in a company, straight away you're paying the extra amount of stamp duty.
Right.
So be careful. Also, if you're buying a property to live there, do not ever buy it in a company. Why? Because of principal private residence relief.
There's a lot of people on, this will sound silly, I say, there's a lot of people on Instagram who say, when you buy your first property, you should always buy it in a company.
Don't. Ridiculous. It depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
If you're buying it to live in, never buy it in a company, because you're going to end up paying what is known as ATED, annual tax on envelope dwellings.
Right.
You don't want to be doing that, where basically it's an additional tax to prevent people from living in properties, or anyone connected with that person living in a property that's owned by a company.
Right.
So don't do that. If you're buying a property and you intend to live there, either by yourself or with your family, and you don't want to pay tax on the future sale, because at the moment, if you own a property and you sell it, if you live there, then you don't pay capital gains tax on your main residence. Although they're bringing in a wealth tax now as well, but that's by the by, goodness me. But essentially, you're shooting yourself in the foot by buying a property in a company, because when you sell it, then you will be paying tax on the sale, whether it's you're selling the company or whether you're selling the property within the company.
Right.
So be wary of that. Look out for incorporation.
Yeah. Always get the right advice.
Yes, get the right advice. If you're going to incorporate, be careful and have a look at who owns the property before. So if you own the property in your sole name and you incorporate, you might avoid capital gains tax in the incorporation, but what you won't avoid is stamp duty. You will pay stamp duty at the full rate on that transfer.
Right.
How do you get round that? Essentially, properties that are owned in a partnership and then the partnership is incorporated into a limited company, they avoid stamp duty. There's specific legislation in place that ensures that you don't pay stamp duty when you incorporate a property portfolio from a partnership into a company. In terms of capital gains tax, which you certainly don't want to be doing if you incorporate, you need to be trading the portfolio as a business. The hard and fast rule, it's not set in stone, but the generic test is how many hours are you personally working within your property portfolio? So are you a full-time landlord, should we say? And that tends to be 20 hours. It's not written in stone anywhere, but what it does do, it prevents the accidental landlord with one buy-to-let and incorporating it and trying to save capital gains tax. So that won't work. And be really careful with companies that promote tax saving strategies and tax saving schemes, because they'll tend to sell you something that's too good to be true, and that's because it is too good to be true. So we've seen an entity that's now gone bankrupt, sadly, which basically they went bust. All their clients, however, have had to fork out massive tax bills because the advice they were given was wrong.
Right.
So be careful of that. Seek professional advice from someone who's qualified, who doesn't overtly try to pitch you a magic wand formula that guarantees that you'll save tax. There's no guarantee in anything you do with tax.
Cool.